Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we have the case of Snow the Salt Queen, Chandra Freak, or the victim's name, Helen Hastings. She has several names. Mostly because this is a case that has to do with social media, and therefore it has more to do with internet names than with the real names of the people involved. I already shared this video on my secondary channel a few weeks ago, where the atmosphere is more casual. And I mentioned that I wanted to do it here in a more serious way and with more details. So here it is. The cases of people who kill and are also TikTokers are incredibly more than just two. We can already make a playlist with cases only of people who became known through TikTok. So today we have what would be the third killer from TikTok is Snow the Salt Queen. The truth is that TikTok is an easy-to-use app, and anyone can create an account. So it's normal that there are all kinds of people in there, which explains why we also find killers. What doesn't vary much in these murders is precisely the age of the people who commit them. Are they always teenagers or young adults? Anyway, up there, the one on the screen, you have the rest of my cases. Also, the TikTok playlist, in case more cases like this come up. Below are my social media links if you'd like to follow me. Now, let's begin. First of all, let's talk about the victim. Her name was Helen Hastings. At the time of the events, she was 18 years old. Born in July 2002, her parents were Philip Hastings and Susan Rosenberg. Phil was 65 years old and had been married twice before, with 4 children who were older than Helen. By quite a lot. Susan was just over 40 years old and had developed preeclampsia during her pregnancy and had almost died, so she couldn't have any more children. Both of them worked in genetics for the Baylor College of Medicine. Helen liked several things, and they didn't have much to do with each other. She had done theater, music, also swimming, and in fact, she had also participated in robotics as one of her extracurricular activities. Besides, she had a good relationship with her family. They used to travel together, mostly for work. Helen spent her breaks traveling with her parents on their conference circuit, going to places like Oslo, Croatia, and Tokyo. In fact, at age 7, she told her mother she wanted to open an institute for women scientists in Japan when she grew up. The bullying started in elementary school. She had also been diagnosed with misophonia, which can trigger a reaction to sounds like dripping water, chewing gum, or repetitive noises like tapping a pencil. So, she was physically unable to sit in the classroom with her classmates or have lunch at school. She felt miserable, and her classmates made her life very difficult. It became unbearable for her to be there most of the time. People with misophonia can get irritated, enraged, or even panic when they hear those sounds. On top of all this, she came out as pansexual while she was in school, which made the bullying worse because anything other than heterosexuality is a reason for bullying. And this didn't happen that long ago. It was during this time, however, that she discovered anime and cosplay. Around that time, she went with a friend named Bailey to an anime convention where she saw people cosplaying firsthand. She began immersing herself in this world, which helped distract her from the difficulties at school. She felt accompanied, since she had finally found a group of people she could connect with. And the truth is that cosplay is a huge world of people becoming their favorite characters. Plus, it takes a lot of work. And Helen tried to communicate this to her parents who didn't quite understand it, but they tried. Helen, from all this, she created an account on Instagram and another on Musical.ly, which would be the precursor to the app we now know as TikTok. There she would post everything about her cosplays and start trying to recreate what she had seen at the conventions. It was then, through that world, that she met Snow the Salt Queen, or as she was also known on social media, Chandra Freak. When all this occurred, Helen had around 120,000 TikTok followers. Snow, however, was a well-known person on the same platform. She made cosplay videos and other types of videos with background music there.
doesn't follow the rules.
What? Break it down, bitch.
I didn't see you back at all. Shut that ass up. Gotta figure like a pin. I'm gonna figure like a... I don't
care if you think I'm dumb. I can't eat this, sweetie, but I want to be adored. I'm the girl you'd want.
Let's also remember that both of them had met through the Houston cosplay circle since they both lived there. These two things made it easier for them to communicate with each other and deepen their friendship over time. Snow became popular not only because of her looks, but also for cosplaying as Junko Enoshima from the anime Danganronpa. To be honest with you, she really did look a lot like Ganko. And I think a little context about this anime makes sense right now. Because the story became well known mainly because Snow looked like Junko in real life. She wanted to be Junko, let me explain. Danganronpa is an anime about basically an apocalypse caused by Junko Enoshima. Sorry for the spoiler, because the game and the anime are about telling the mystery of how it all started and who Junko is. As you can tell, this character isn't really right in the head, but beyond that, a lot of people like her style and even her attitude. Snow was no exception. The problem was that Snow tried really hard to imitate Junko. Amid all this, Helen had begun misbehaving with her parents. But, like many family fights, most of them are resolved when the family splits up. In this case, Helen, by going to college later, was able to find a peace that helped them resolve their problems. In 2020, Helen was admitted to Oberlin College. She would live there in Ohio. The arrangement was to live with Snow for a while, go to college when it started, and when coronavirus disease became too much for the college to stay open. Helen would go back to live with Snow, still having virtual classes. It should be said that, apparently, the way Snow was living wasn't the best and didn't contribute much to Helen's life. Despite everything, their love and understanding for each other made her decide to stay. But before getting to the events, I'm going to tell you a little more about Snow and the controversies she had on the internet before the case itself. Snow was born as Marie Ann Oliver on September 21st, 1988, and lived in Houston, Texas, which is where Helen was as well. By the way, while Snow was on social media, she mentioned that she was a non-binary person. Therefore, we are going to refer to this person in a neutral way, not referring to any particular gender. Although many people also referred to Snow as she on the internet, mainly because her main character was Junko Enoshima, she is very closely tied to this character. By the way, there are 3 major controversies prior to this case that are not directly related to murders. But they do build the character for which people knew her. One of the episodes that went most viral is the cemetery one, which happened in 2019 when Snow and a friend went to a cemetery in cosplay to film, and during the filming. During that video, they started touching graves, leaning on them, and so on. By the way, they were wearing Danganronpa series cosplays, as I already told you, an anime about killing each other. Characters, short characters, pretty crazy, which people didn't like at all, the whole combination. We're talking about anime fans, game fans, and people who weren't fans of that, who thought what they were doing was in very bad taste. Clearly, here in Buenos Aires, it's a bit more common to take photos in cemeteries. Recoleta Cemetery, a very well-known and beautiful cemetery, is a popular spot where people go to take photos. Next to the mausoleums, it's not such a big deal, but in the cemetery where they were, it was directly with graves that were a bit more open. Not a mausoleum, not a building, but the tombstones right there directly. And yes, it's true that they brushed against them, touched them, some people accused us of kicking them, and of course then people got angry. The thing is, she later went online to say that she had permission to be there and that they had been very respectful. The video clearly showed their actions contradicting the claims made. All this drama escalates because the mayor gets involved, or the park spokesperson, who is responsible for communicating events happening in the area. And they announced a Facebook post that wasn't true, that they didn't have any permission to be there, that what they were saying was a lie, that clearly they hadn't been respectful. And that's how Snow's lies come to light. This story isn't a major event and doesn't suggest an impending death. Then there's the second controversy, which is that she was sexualizing minors. This is actually pretty common. She, being an adult, would dress up, or rather cosplay as minors, and that's about it. The truth is, it's normal. But then she would sell sexualized photos for people over 18, which is considered sexualizing minors. I'm not gonna get into arguments here, but the truth is that once again, the internet took it pretty badly. And finally, the third controversy that happened before the events, and also has nothing to do with what happened. It's the one about the wig. In the video by a YouTuber named Stardere, she says that she bought a Shunko Enoshima wig, the character, which cost $300. Snow supposedly made this wig, put it together, and sold it, because as I said, she was very attached to this character. A lot of people knew Snow through Shunko Enoshima, and therefore many wanted this wig that Snow used. She said she was selling the styled wig with all the things needed to put it on and be ready to cosplay. The cost of the labor was $300, which covered Snow buying the base pieces, styling them, and assembling the finished product. However, this didn't turn out to be as she described. Tardare bought the wig for a friend, and it was supposed to arrive at her house in December of that year. At some point that month, she went to visit family, and when she came back, the packages that were supposed to have arrived at her house. All her December purchases, including gifts, were stolen that month. She assumed the wig was among the stolen items, but it wasn't. She then called Snow, explaining what had happened, thinking that the wig was among the packages, and that obviously, Snow must have already sent it. Snow said there was no problem sending her another one, but that she would still charge her $135. The problem that Stardare noticed was that after paying her, after her friend gave her the money, the wig arrived at the house again. So what does that mean? That Snow had never sent the wig, and that while they were arranging the shipment of the second wig, the first one appeared, which Snow had just sent. In other words, she scammed them. They paid almost $500 for 2 wigs. And the worst part is that it was a pretty bad wig. In the end, Snow had done almost nothing with this item. It wasn't special at all, and it didn't even have instructions. Here, I'll show you a part of Stardare's video so you can understand a bit more about what I mean.
One clip here, the base wig, which is a bit longer, another short one, another clip.
Short?
We have another clip, one more clip, so we have 5 clips, now without lyrics. Nothing in this. This also came with this, I don't know what these are, it's something new in cosplay like I've been in. I've been in the community for a while, but this is unprecedented. And I don't know if they use bobby pins, but I don't know. So it's not like I could know. Out Snow that she'd reach out back to me because it's not even like she responded. My friend, who paid $500 for this wig.
As you can see from the beginning, it was a box with no presentation, no instructions, with a wig all messed up, so I hadn't done anything. She bought some wigs from Amazon, put them together, threw them in a box, and sent them back. This has nothing to do with killing someone, but I'm telling you because it gives a bit of context to this whole situation. She already had problems with other people before. This might also help you decide in your minds whether she's really guilty or not of what happened. Because ultimately, it remains a topic of discussion among internet users today. Having said all this, let's move on to the day of the events. Helen lived with Snow. The house was a bit messy, but their good friendship made it fine for Helen to share the house with Snow. The unthinkable occurs on January 17th, 2021 when the situation reaches its worst point. Snow and Helen were with a group of friends at night watching Gotham, the Batman spin-off series. The group was also drinking, so by the beginning of the night, everyone was already pretty drunk. This, of course, also has to be taken into account. At a certain point then, Snow went to the garage of the house and found her ex-boyfriend's gun. According to Snow, her ex-boyfriend had told her that the gun was still there, but he had unloaded it and it didn't have any bullets. This also needs to be taken into account because being unloaded doesn't mean it doesn't have bullets. She took the gun and brought it inside the house with the group. Around 1 in the morning, when everyone was already drunk, Snow pulled out the gun and a friend asked her to let him shoot it. But as a joke, like when someone says on social media that they want to die, it was a joke. They laughed, and that was it. It was kind of common in their group. And that's when Helen says to Snow, me, also telling him, shoot me too. Again, all of this as a joke. Snow then points the gun at her head and pulls the trigger. Snow. He would tell the police later that he thought the gun wasn't loaded. that his girlfriend had told him there was no ammunition, that she had taken it out, but clearly there was still a bullet inside. It was loaded, and it fired when he pulled the trigger. Does this excuse pointing it at a friend? And that he should have checked first that the gun wasn't loaded, or honestly, that he shouldn't have taken it out of the garage in the first place. As a result, on January 19th, 2021, 2 days later, Helen died. They took her to the hospital trying to save her life, but nothing could be done. In fact, her brain had already ceased activity before that. Snow was jailed, but released after paying $20,000. Despite the incident, she continued making TikToks. No one really knew what was happening. No one knew that Snow had shot a friend. She was uploading cosplay videos again with increasingly outlandish characters. She played not only Junko, but also characters like Toga from Boku no Hero. For those who don't know her, she's a character whose power has to do with blood, taking blood from other people in order to imitate them. It's just an example. I'm also going to show you some TikToks here so you can see what I mean, because she made several pretty questionable TikToks, especially after considering that she killed someone.
Come on, Gromit, we've got to hide the body. Come on.
Already? Are you really that scared of being killed? There's a 5 in 6 chance.
Having said all that anyway, Snow didn't respect his parole and they put Snow back in jail. We still don't know what the judge is going to say about whether he's guilty or not and what he's guilty of. In any case, because an accident is not the same as something done on purpose. A lot of people, and this is exactly where the dilemma lies, believe it was on purpose, and other people think it was really just an accident, and a misunderstanding about whether the gun was loaded or not. Beyond that, personally, I think there shouldn't even be jokes about shooting another person. He shouldn't have taken the gun out or anything like that. Even if it was an accident, it doesn't absolve him of responsibility. He is still accountable for the crime. What are your thoughts on this recent case? There will likely be updates since it's quite new. If you want to leave more updated information, please do so in the comments. I'll be reading them. Besides that, there are people who told me on my secondary channel that they knew Snow from before, that they used to follow this person on TikTok. So maybe you all have also seen some of her TikToks or some of the cosplay she did. Also, out of curiosity, if you knew about this person but not what she did afterwards, please let me know. Or the online controversies she had. But that's all for today. Thank you to my Patreons and channel members for supporting me through those platforms. With nothing more to say, here's a new video and a recommended one. You can subscribe by clicking on my face and I'll see you in another video. Goodbye.